There are a ton of systems, mechanics, and things to discover in Unicorn Overlord. Some of it can be a bit overwhelming, but don't worry, I've got you. Here are some spoiler-free tips to give you a major leg up in your playthrough of Unicorn Overlord. First tip is to build a good foundation. There are several things you can do very early on to set yourself up for success. The first is to keep an eye on items and skills that give experience up. These items will help you quickly outscale your enemies, so abuse them early. Great examples of this that you are given for free include Chloe's Charm, an accessory that grants a 30% XP boost which can be given to any other unit, Elaine's Valor skill Royal Order, which can give an entire formation a 100% XP boost for one round of combat, and the cheap recruit weapons that are sold at the harbor right after the set of tutorial missions that the game makes you do. And since we're on the topics of towns and harbors, after you complete one set of deliveries at these locations and see an upgrade scene for the location, you'll be able to station guards at the town. After every combat mission, this station's unit will generate a small amount of a given resource, and this can happen for every town that you station a guard in. So the sooner you liberate towns, make those deliveries, and then station a unit at said town, the sooner you'll start to reap the profits from your investment to use in future town building, repairs, or any other specific missions or side quests. But wait, there's more. I highly recommend, after you are able to freely move around the map, to visit the very first harbor, and in this town, you want to board a boat back to the beginning island that the party came from. There's a cute little surprise waiting for you that I won't spoil, but your reward is an accessory that helps you generate more money by a significant amount, so before you start doing any missions, get this item, equip it onto one of your main party members, and start making that moolah. Tip number 2, learn the swap hop. When you have multiple allies near each other as you engage in combat, you can choose to swap the ally closest to the enemy with another nearby ally that might be a bit further away. This can be used to save a unit that's resting or just got blindsided from getting attacked, or to fix a bad matchup, but more importantly, you can use this technique to slingshot your slower formation leads like flyers or armored knights to the front lines or into choke points. It may not seem that powerful, but I can guarantee you that in future harder encounters, if you make smart use of this swap hopping, you'll be way ahead of the curve. Tip 3, terrain matters. As you move your units around, you may notice a little blurb on the right of the screen, right below the minimap, that tells you what terrain you are currently pointing at. While some terrains don't do anything, other terrains will have an impact on certain unit types. While traveling on roads, infantry and cavalry units get a speed boost. But while in forest areas, cavalry gets a speed penalty, while swamp-like areas called wetlands give both infantry and cavalry units a movement penalty. Flyers are generally immune to terrain effects, which can be nice, but also not nice depending on the situation. So keep an eye on your terrain and abuse it to your advantage. Tip 4, understanding the nuance between melee and ranged attacks. In this game, melee attacks can't be used on back row units if a front row unit exists within the enemy formation, while ranged attacks don't have the same restriction. By default, you may not notice this, as outside of specific ranged attacks prioritizing certain types of enemies, the ranged attacker will probably default to attacking the closest enemy to the unit itself, unless you specify a tactics rule. A quick and easy way to start abusing the power of ranged attacks is to set your ranged attack skill to prioritize back row enemies. And speaking of the tactics menu, the next tip is to change up your tactics. I'm pretty guilty of this myself, but oftentimes I'm just too lazy to switch up my program tactics or even my formation. But if you are struggling at an encounter, take a careful look at the enemy's formation and tactics and try modifying your own tactics and formation to see if you can affect the outcome to your advantage. Since everyone's gonna have a little bit of a different strategy that they're playing with, it's hard to give a specific tip, but I've broken down some things for formations and tactics that are generally good to do. For formations, a good rule of thumb is to try to keep an eye out on the weapon types that the enemies are using. If you see a lance unit, try to spread out your units so that there's no two units in the front and the back row that are standing directly next to each other if possible. And if you see an axe unit, try to make sure that you only have one frontline unit, so you're not taking extra damage from cleaves. These rules will not work every single encounter, but can be a quick and easy way for you to make use of formation without getting into the weeds of it all. As for tactics are a whole can of worms that are much deeper than formations, but I'll try to keep it short. What I recommend as a general good setting is to make sure whatever your active attack skill is for your unit of choice, make sure to set the condition to prioritize the enemy with the lowest HP. A dead enemy is an enemy that cannot hurt you, and some attacks like the Knight's Assaulting Lance will grant you an additional action point whenever you kill an enemy. So unless you had something specific in mind, this is a general good rule to slap onto every single one of your attack skill that you're going to be using. And also, just to clear up some confusions if you're new to the system, it is highly encouraged to stack the same active skill with various conditions. If you're just starting to learn how this works, go by this rule. Rank more specific commands like targeting a specific type of unit first. Then you want to set an additional rule for the same skill that is much more generic generic in nature. For example, with a soldier like Chloe, you can prioritize attacking an enemy that has both a frontline and a backline unit in the same column, and if that condition doesn't exist, it will go to the second tactics that you set to attack the unit with the lowest HP.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
On to tip number 6, and this one's for all my Fire Emblem homies out there. When you first see a unit like Josef, you're immediately going to be thinking that's a Jagan. He's there to steal my XP and hog all the resources so that way my weaker units won't ever get stronger. But in this game, it's a little bit different. Units within the same formation as Josef are not penalized for being there, so they'll still get a good amount of XP, so definitely make use of Josef. The only thing about Josef that is not that great is that for his level and his class, his base stats are a lot lower than normal, so you'll have to retire him eventually, so prepare for that. But for now, use him as either a quick way to do damage or even a great sustained tank to put in the front lines. Tip number 7, don't pass out on hiring mercenaries. As you start to liberate more parts of the map, you'll be able to visit forts. Each fort has different types of units that you can hire at the cost of honor. Very early on, it's probably a better idea to spend honor to increase your general unit size, but once you have 2 formations with 3 units, branching out on what you spend honor on can actually be more productive than buying more formation slots. Mercenaries are just as good as any other named unit of the same class type, except you can customize their growth rates and mess with their palettes from the get-go. To customize a named and unique unit's growth rates and colors the same way, you're gonna have to get your hands on an Idealist's hand mirror. This hand mirror can be given to you through special side quests, main story quests, or it can be purchased from the black market traders for 30,000 gold. While in the early game they are limited in supply, I can only surmise that there's going to be an unlimited stock of them later on in the game. But that's just a speculation for now. Anyways, back to mercenaries. This is a good way for you to get units that you may not be given at that point in the story. For example, you can get your hands on a Griffin Knight, which I highly recommend you do much earlier than when the game's story mission would hand you a Griffin Knight of your own. By spending around 7 honors at a fort in the southern part of the map of where you started the game, you'll be able to get this amazing flying unit, which can be scarce for quite a while, and they do so much. This unit is a ball of power. They can do AoE cleave, is strong against cavalry unit, and can self-sustain with a passive heal all from level 1, which is a crazy boon to any party. And if you make the Griffin Knight your formation leader, then you can skip over unpassable terrain, which can outright trivialize some maps and tougher checkpoints early on in the game. To learn more about the many other unit types available within the early segments of the game, check out my early game class tier list video, link in the description below, or by clicking the widget on the top right of the screen. Also, mercenary units may not have report conversations, but they can build up report relationships and provide the stat bonuses that come alongside this relationship. Mercenaries can also be dismissed and they will refund half of the honors you spent on them. So hiring mercenaries early can be a great way to experiment and try different combinations and formations. And from my personal experience, spending honor is not that big a deal because if you win any fights in the open world, you get 1 or 2 honors already and the enemies respawn. So honors are in high supply. I wouldn't worry too much about running out. Before we continue, question for you all. What is your favorite class type so far? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're having a good time, give this video a like and consider subscribing for more Unicorn Overlord content. Thanks. Next up, tip number 8. Don't be shy with Valor points. Outside of spending Valor points deploying units or using Valor skills, which are immensely powerful, there's one more powerful action that is available to you. At the cost of 1 Valor point, you can swap the leader of your formation, and while this may not seem like anything crazy on the surface, it can be the difference between intercepting an enemy on time by swapping from a slower unit to a much faster unit like a knight as your leader, skipping choke point and going straight to their most vulnerable position by swapping to a flyer, or getting up on a watchtower and switching to a cleric to provide mass team healing assist to any allies engaging in combat nearby. This is a subtle, underrated, and very powerful tool that gets better with more unit variety and more unit slots. Tip number 9, prioritize items and equipments that provide additional action points or passive points. AP and PP respectively are the ways that your units can take turns. So with more AP and more PP on a unit, the more actions they can take per combat round, and the more actions per round, the better your action economy is. You really can't go wrong with these items, so definitely keep an eye out for them. And the final 10th tip is to have fun and take your time. There is a lot to discover and a lot to learn, but we're all in this together. As long as you're having fun, that's all that really matters. Thanks for watching, and I hope these tips helped you out on your playthrough of Unicorn Overlord. If you'd like to further support this channel or influence the future videos I make, consider becoming a member of my YouTube community and voting in my video topics poll. For more information on Unicorn Overlord, check out this video on screen right now. My name is Varsona, and I'll see you next time.